I hear the Spirit placing these words on my heart, and before we go any further, I want to say this to you directly. If you stay through to the end of this video, you will walk away knowing the names of all 7 tests that were placed in your path, understanding exactly why they came in the same month, and knowing what it means for what is being prepared for you on the other side of that season. Every minute of this is worth staying for. Now, let me describe something for you. It is late, maybe 2 in the morning, maybe earlier, but a certain kind of quiet has settled into the room, not the peaceful kind, the kind that has weight to it. You are somewhere in your home, and the physical space around you is still, but your body is not quite right. There is a tightness in your chest that has been there longer than it should be, the kind you have almost learned to ignore because it has been sitting there so consistently that it started to feel normal. Your mind has been louder than usual, not with clear thoughts, but with a low hum, a background frequency of questions that do not have clean answers yet. And somewhere underneath all of that, somewhere in the deeper quiet beneath the noise, your spirit has felt crowded, pressed in on. Not from one direction, but from every direction at once, as if the walls of the season you have been living in have moved closer without warning, and you have been trying to figure out why. Because the honest truth is that the last month, and I want you to think about whatever stretch of time your body just recognized. The moment I said that was not just hard in one area, it was hard in multiple areas simultaneously, and that is a completely different kind of hard. When one thing breaks, you can gather your resources and focus, but when multiple things break in the same window of time, when financially something shifted, relationally something moved, your sense of direction was called into question. Your faith was quieter than you needed it to be. A specific kind of exhaustion sets in that is almost impossible to explain to someone who has not lived inside it. Here is what I need you to hold from the very beginning of this conversation. That was not chaos. What you went through was not random suffering. It was not a breakdown season, even if it felt like one from the inside. What you went through was architecture, deliberately designed, specifically targeted, structurally intentional architecture. And in a few minutes I am going to show you the exact blueprint, 7 tests, each one with a name, each one with a purpose, and as I name them, something in you is going to recognize them, one by one. But first I need to say something. If you are still with me right now, if your whole body recognized what I just described, the tightness, the simultaneous pressure, the exhaustion of holding multiple things together at once, that recognition is not random. Something in you knew this message was for you before I finished the first sentence. Hold on to that. Now, let me start with a number, the number 7. In almost every sacred tradition that has preserved wisdom across centuries, 7 is not arbitrary. 7 is the number of completion, of a full circuit being run, of something being tested from every angle without a single dimension left untouched. 7 days to create a world, not because it required 7, but because completeness requires that nothing be left unfinished. 7 years to refine Joseph's character before the assignment could arrive. 7 is the number that says, this was comprehensive. Nothing escaped the process. And what I sense being spoken over someone watching this right now, someone who has just come through or is still in the final days of a month they will not forget, is that what you experienced was comprehensive. It touched your faith. It touched your finances. It touched your relationships. It touched your sense of who you are and where you are going. Nothing was left untested, and that comprehensiveness was not cruelty. That was the signature of the highest level of formation. Because here is something that most people do not understand about how the chosen one is prepared. Most people experience challenges sequentially, one at a time, spaced out, manageable. One season of difficulty, then a period of recovery, then another challenge. That is normal formation. But for a specific category of person, those being prepared for a specific level of assignment, the tests do not arrive one at a time. They arrive in waves, clustered, simultaneous. Multiple areas of life challenged in the same compressed window of time, not because they are being punished, but because the assignment they are being prepared for requires having been tested in every dimension, not just some of them. I want to give this framework a name so we can walk through it together. The 7 seals of formation. 7 tests, each one targeted at a specific dimension of who you are. And as I describe each one, I want you to notice which ones you recognize, because by the time we finish, you are going to understand something about the month you just came through that will permanently change the way you see it. And before I go into the first test, I want to say something I genuinely believe. I cannot stand here and claim to know the specifics of your situation. I cannot tell you exactly when this season happened or what the exact circumstances were. What I can tell you is what I feel being placed on my heart for someone watching this right now, and that is that every moment of what you endured was seen, not from a distance, up close. And I do not sense pity over what you went through. I sense something stronger than pity. Let me start with the first test. The first test is the test of silence. This is the one where heaven goes quiet. You pray, and the prayers feel like they rise up and hit something solid and come back unanswered. The worship that used to feel full starts to feel hollow. The sense of divine presence that you had built your orientation around seems to have stepped back or gone still, and in the absence of that presence, questions arrive that are harder to carry than any circumstance. Is this real? Is any of it real? Why would the silence come now, of all times? The test of silence does not test your theology. It tests whether your faithfulness is dependent on feedback. It asks the most fundamental question: will you hold the direction when nothing is confirming it? Will you keep your character when the confirming voice has gone quiet? The reframe I want to offer you is this: silence is not absence. Silence is the sound of a laboratory running without interruption. When a scientist needs precise measurements, every source of external noise has to be removed. The silence is not indifference. The silence is the condition required for what is being measured. The second test is the test of loss. Something was removed. Maybe it was a relationship. Maybe it was an opportunity you had been building toward. Maybe it was a version of the future you had been holding in your mind, a specific picture of what this chapter was going to look like, and that picture was taken away without warning and without an adequate explanation. The loss was real. The grief was real. That is not something to minimize. But here is what the test of loss is actually testing. It is not testing whether you can cope with losing something. It is testing whether your identity is anchored in what you have or in who you are. When the thing you were using to confirm your value is removed, does the value remain? I think of a woman someone described to me, someone who had been through a stretch of loss that should have unraveled her. She did not use the word grief to describe what happened after. She used the word clearance. She said, what was removed had been occupying space that something more essential needed. The loss, as painful as it was, had been preparation, not punishment. What was removed from your life in this season was not taken from you. What was removed was the thing you were standing on instead of your actual foundation. And the test of loss was given to someone strong enough to keep standing after the ground beneath them shifted. The third test is the test of betrayal. Someone who was supposed to be safe was not. Trust was broken by proximity, meaning the wound did not come from a stranger but from somewhere close. And that specific kind of pain has a particular texture to it, because it is not just the injury that hurts. It is the gap between who you believed that person to be and who they revealed themselves to be. That gap becomes something you carry in a way that ordinary pain does not ask you to. The test of betrayal tests one specific thing: your capacity to remain open to the calling after people have closed themselves to you. It asks whether the wound will cause you to pull back from your purpose, to shrink the size of what you are willing to believe for, to protect yourself by becoming less than what you were made to be. There is a force that understands what you are being built for, and that force cannot stop the assignment. But what it can do is use familiar faces to wound you in ways that are designed to slow the formation. And the fact that you are still here, the fact that your character remained intact, means that strategy did not land the way it was intended. The fourth test is the test of provision. This is the one that touches the material ground beneath your feet. Financial pressure, instability in the resources you count on, the numbers not working the way they need to work, and the specific anxiety that comes from watching the gap between what is needed and what is available, and not being able to close it through effort alone. The test of provision is not a test about money. It is a test about whether you believe you are provided for when the visible evidence says otherwise. It is asking, when the usual sources are not delivering, can you hold the belief that provision exists beyond what you can currently see? There is a Hebrew word, jireh, that is usually translated as provider, but the more accurate meaning is closer to this: the one who sees ahead and has already prepared what you will need before you arrive at the place where you will need it, not who will provide when asked. Who has already prepared in advance because the provision was arranged before the need arrived. The test of provision is asking not whether he will come through. It is asking whether you can trust what has already been prepared in advance, even when you cannot see the preparation yet. We are halfway through the 7. The first 4 tests were aimed at the world around you, your relationship with the divine, the things you held, the people you trusted, the material ground beneath your feet. But the final 3 tests are different. They do not test what is around you. They test what is inside you, and those are the ones that most people in your season had already stopped before they could reach. Before we get there, I want to come back to something I need to mention. I came across a study from Princeton from a neuroscience research team about what happens inside the human brain during exactly the kind of sustained, high-pressure, multi-directional formation you have been living through. What they found was not what they expected. The specific brain frequency linked to what they called breakthrough cognition, deep pattern recognition, heightened intuition, the mental clarity that produces what researchers described as genius-level responses to complexity. That frequency does not diminish under sustained pressure. In the right individual, it spikes. I am going to come back to this in part 2, because what is happening inside your brain right now, on the other side of these 7 tests, is directly connected to what I want to show you. For now, 4 tests recognized, 4 seals of formation pressed into your character in the same month. For the one who has been counting along, I hear the Spirit saying, you are further along than you know. Stay. Leave the number of tests you recognized in the comments below. Not for me. For the ones who will come after you, who need to know someone else made it through. Part 2 is where we name the final 3, the ones that go deepest, and where I show you exactly what passing all 7 in the same month means for what comes next. I want to start part 2 by coming back to something. You came back. I want you to notice that for a moment, not as a small thing, but as what it actually is. The part of you that returned to hear the rest of this, the part that refused to leave before the conversation was complete, that is not a passive instinct. That is the chosen one in you, oriented toward completion, even when completion is uncomfortable. You did not know that returning was itself a demonstration of who you are. But it was. I also said I would come back to that Princeton study. And I will. But first, the 3 remaining tests. Because they are the ones that go somewhere deeper than circumstances, and they are the ones that most people in a compression season never fully recognize, because they feel more like personal failures than tests. They are not. Let me show you. The 5th test is the test of identity. This is the one that most people carry in silence, because it is the hardest to admit out loud. It is the moment, and I want to be specific here, because this is not a vague spiritual experience. It is the actual, genuine, middle-of-the-night moment when you asked, who am I, really? Not as a devotional exercise, not as humble theology, as a real destabilizing question that arrived without warning and did not have a clean answer. Maybe the calling started to feel like something you had constructed, a story you had built to make the difficulty meaningful, to give the suffering a frame that made it bearable. Maybe the sense of purpose that had organized your whole direction started to feel, for the first time, thin, like it could not hold the weight of the evidence accumulating against it. Maybe you sat alone with the question, what if I was wrong about who I am? I want to give this a name. I am calling it the stripping protocol. When something is being built to hold great weight, the construction process requires removing everything that cannot hold that weight first. The scaffolding that was useful during the building phase, but is not part of the permanent structure that has to come down, not because it was bad, because it was temporary. When the stripping protocol is active, the identity that was assembled from other people's expectations, from performance, from the need for external confirmation, that identity becomes unstable. And the instability feels like a crisis, when what it actually is the removal of the borrowed self to reveal the one underneath. The authentic identity does not require circumstances to confirm it. It does not need results to arrive on schedule to know it is real. It does not collapse when the evidence runs thin. And the test of identity was designed to find that version of you, the one underneath all the layers, and confirm that it had survived everything above it. You are allowed to not know who you are in this season. That is not a disqualification from the calling. That is the calling being refined down to what is actually load-bearing. Think of David in the wilderness. Not just the geographic wilderness, the cave, the years of running, the distance from everything he had been told was his, but the interior wilderness. The stretch of time where the anointing he received as a boy had not yet translated into the assignment he had been promised. And in that gap the question was the same one you asked. Am I still who I was told I am? His answer was not confidence built from evidence, it was confidence built from formation, and by the time he emerged, the identity was no longer dependent on the throne to confirm it. It simply was who he was. The sixth test is the test of patience. I want to slow down here, because this one deserves a different pace. Let me take it slowly, because the test itself was slow. This is the one where everything went still. No movement. The doors you knocked on stayed closed. The timeline you had believed in, the sequence of events you thought you understood, the specific moment when something was supposed to shift, did not move. Not yet. And the particular anguish of a stillness you did not choose is different from the anguish of visible suffering. At least visible suffering is something you can describe. This is invisible. It is just nothing yet. The test of patience does not test whether you can wait. Waiting is manageable when you know the wait has a clear end. This tests whether you can hold your character together when the wait has no visible finish line, when nothing around you is confirming that movement is happening, when every reasonable reading of your situation says, nothing is changing. There is a Greek word hupomone that most translators turn into the English word patience, but that translation loses something essential. Hupomone does not mean waiting comfortably. It means remaining under. The image is a foundation that stays in place under the full weight of a building, not because the pressure is light, but because the foundation is deep enough that the pressure simply cannot move it. That is what the test of patience tests, not your ability to sit still, your ability to remain fully yourself, rooted, oriented, unchanged in character while the weight sits on top of you and the timeline stays hidden. What looked like stagnation in this season was actually deep root work happening below the surface. What felt like delay was divine sequencing, the careful alignment of elements that cannot be rushed without breaking what is being built. What seemed like silence from heaven was the sound of construction happening in dimensions you do not have access to yet. What felt like being forgotten was actually being protected from arriving too early at a place that was not yet ready to receive what you are carrying. I cannot tell you when the waiting ends. I genuinely cannot. What I can tell you is this: the test of patience is not passed by receiving what you were waiting for. It is passed by holding your character while you wait. And if you are still oriented toward the calling, still here, still paying attention, still willing to finish this conversation, you have not failed this test. You are passing it right now, the seventh test. The final seal. The seventh test is the test of surrender. This is the hardest one. This is the one where you are asked to release the specific version of the future you had been holding in your hands. Not release hope, not release faith. Release the particular shape you had given to hope, the specific outcome, the specific timing, the specific way you had decided this was all supposed to go. You were asked to open your hands and let go of that particular version, and everything in you resisted, because it was not a small thing you were holding. It was something that had mattered deeply for a long time. Something you had prayed for, planned for, built your whole formation around. Releasing it did not feel like wisdom. It felt like saying, I was wrong to believe. But that is the test. That is the exact moment the test of surrender was designed to find, because there is a question underneath it, and the question is this: is your faith in the one who promised, or in the version of the promise that you designed? Are you trusting God, or are you trusting your plan with God's endorsement? Think of Abraham on the mountain. The thing he was asked to release was not just precious, it was the thing the entire promise had been built around. And it was in the act of opening his hands, genuinely releasing, not reluctantly postponing, that the provision appeared. The ram in the thicket was already there. The prepared provision could not be seen until the grip was released. Surrender is not quitting. Surrender is the completion of the circuit. It says, I trust the one behind this more than I trust my understanding of it. And the test of surrender is the seventh seal, because it is the one that proves whether everything built in the previous six is actually real. Real trust does not need the outcome to confirm it. Real trust releases the outcome entirely and remains in faith without the evidence. You surrendered the specific version you had been holding. You released the outcome you had gripped. You let go of the timeline. That was not weakness. That was the most advanced form of faith that exists. Now, I want you to hear something. Take a breath and hear this. You went in needing answers, and you came out with something better: trust. You went in holding tightly, and you came out holding correctly. You went in testing whether the calling was real, and you came out knowing it is the only real thing. You went in searching for signs, and you came out being one. You went in surviving, and you came out sealed. 7 tests. 1 month. All 7 passed. And I hear the Spirit saying, over what you endured, over every night you held it together, over every test that found something in you that did not break under the weight, what I hear being spoken is not, I am satisfied, not, I am relieved. What I hear is this: I am impressed. Not the way a teacher is pleased when a student gets the expected result. The way a craftsman is moved when a material holds under pressure that would have destroyed anything lesser. The way someone who has watched every moment of the formation, not from a distance, but from close, turns to speak and says, this is the one. This is what I had in mind. 7 tests. In the same month. And not one of them found anything in you that broke. Now, I need to come back to the Princeton study, because what I am about to describe is not separate from what we have been talking about. It is the physical dimension of the same truth. A neuroscience research team studying human brain activity during periods of sustained, multidirectional, high-pressure formation found something that surprised even them. The specific brain frequency linked to what they called breakthrough cognition, deep intuition, pattern recognition, that most people only access accidentally, the mental clarity that produces what they described as genius-level responses to complexity, that frequency is not diminished under the kind of pressure you have been carrying. In individuals with high neurological sensitivity, it is primed for reactivation by exactly those conditions. The scientists call this frequency gamma. And here is what the research tells us about gamma. People with the specific profile we have been describing, high sensitivity, deep intuition, the ability to sense things before they are visible, the kind of pattern recognition that feels more like knowing than thinking, those people have gamma brainwave activity that is, from birth, stronger than the population average. It is the biological side of what the spiritual world calls a gift. But somewhere around age 7, the system we live inside begins to suppress that gamma activity. The educational structure, the noise of modern life, the relentless demands on attention, scientists call what happens the decline effect. The gift does not disappear, it goes dormant. And the gap between who you were as a child, curious, fast, intuitive, lit up from the inside, learning things before anyone had to teach them, and who you sometimes feel like now, is the gap of dormant gamma. A neuroscientist named Dr. Robert Lake spent 34 years studying this. His work was referenced by research teams at MIT, Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, and Berkeley. What he developed after decades working with brain entrainment technology, which is the science of using precisely calibrated audio frequencies to guide the brain into specific states, was a way to reactivate gamma that does not require months of meditation or expensive clinical equipment. What he developed is a 7-minute audio track. You put on headphones, you close your eyes, you listen, and the brain entrainment technology embedded in that track guides your brain back into gamma, not through years of practice, not through discipline, but through direct frequency synchronization. The same biophysical principle that EEG researchers at MIT and Princeton have measured and documented in controlled lab settings. I know what some of you are thinking right now. You have tried things before. Meditation, sound healing, tools that promised transformation and delivered something smaller than that. And I understand that. I want to be direct about why this is a different mechanism, because it matters. Meditation, practiced over months and years, can begin to shift your brain's default frequency toward gamma. That is real, and I am not dismissing it. But the pathway is indirect, and it is slow. Brain entrainment works differently. It does not ask you to practice your way into the state. It directly entrains the brain using a biophysical mechanism, the same one the research teams measured in the labs. The results are not subjective. They are observable. They repeat. And 18,366 people have experienced them. I think of a woman who had spent years going to retreats, doing the practices, seeking the deeper connection, and she said she had almost given up on the idea that she could feel what she used to feel. She bought this not because she believed in the science. She bought it because she was out of other options. 2 weeks later, she used one word to describe what had shifted. Synchronicities. Like the universe had begun speaking to her in a language she could finally understand again. That is a gamma reactivation. That is what comes back online when the frequency that was dormant in you is brought back. The formation season you just completed, the 7 tests, the compression, the simultaneous pressure created exactly the neurological conditions Dr. Lake's research describes as the ideal environment for gamma reactivation. You are not just spiritually ready for what comes next. Your brain is primed for it. To access gamma through traditional biofeedback therapy, you would spend around $300 per session in a clinical setting. A home system that replicates what happens in those sessions costs approximately $7,000. Dr. Lake compressed the core technology into a 7-minute digital audio file. The standard price is $49. Because of who this video was created for specifically, people in the formation season, we have been describing the access price through the link in this description, and pinned comment is $39. That price does not exist on Amazon, it does not exist on Spotify, it does not exist through any other search. It is specifically for you through this video. With that $39, you receive the core Genius Song audio track plus 4 additional resources. A specialized track for activating focus and clarity in children. The original book that inspired the film The Secret. The more substantive, financially grounded version. valued at $20. Elsewhere, a guided visualization for 4 life areas, and a printed infographic of the 5 most essential habits for building toward the life you are being formed for. Everything is backed by a full money-back guarantee. No time limit, no conditions. If you do not feel a difference, the full amount is returned. No explanation required. The only risk is not trying. One thing I want to say clearly before we move on. There are sites and products using the name Genius Song that are not the original. They are copies without the brain entrainment technology, embedded audio files without the mechanism that produces the results. The only source with the verified technology, the 4 bonuses, and the money-back guarantee is the link I have placed in the description and in the pinned comment of this video. Do not search for this anywhere else. The link I have placed is the only access point for what I have described. If you want to explore the 7-minute ritual, the link is in the description and the pinned comment below. Now let me close this the way it deserves to be closed. You went in under pressure, and you came out refined. You went in questioning, and you came out knowing. You went in holding tightly, and you came out holding correctly. You went in searching for signs, and you came out being one. You went in surviving, and you came out sealed. The 7 seals of formation, all 7 you passed them. In the same month. That does not happen to someone going through an ordinary difficult stretch. That happens to someone being made ready. Specifically, intentionally, comprehensively, and I hear the Spirit sealing this over you right now for the person this message was always for. You are not the one who almost did not make it through. You are the one who made it through every single test in the same month and came out on the other side with your character intact, your calling still in your hands, and your faith still oriented forward. That is sealed. That is who you are. You are prepared. You are proven. You are positioned. And it is not just you. Right now, across the world, in different time zones and different circumstances, there are others who have been through this same compression season. They are standing at the same threshold you are standing at right now. You are not alone in this. You are part of something larger, a generation being made ready, and the preparation is nearly complete. Just breathe for a moment. Let what has been spoken today settle into the places that needed to hear it. Let it land, because what comes after the 7 tests is not more testing. What comes after the 7 tests is the assignment, and you are ready for it. If you recognize your season in what I described today, if you passed all 7 of these tests, leave the word sealed in the comments below. Not for the numbers. For the person who will come to this video 3 months from now, in the middle of their own compression season, and scroll through the comments looking for someone who came through the other side. Be that evidence for them. If someone in your life has been carrying a very heavy month right now, someone who has gone quiet, who seems to be holding more than they are showing, send this to them. They may not have the language yet for what they are going through. This might be it. And if this kind of depth is the place you want to keep returning to, where the season you are in is given the respect it deserves, where formation is honored and not rushed, you know where to find it. Wherever you are in your formation right now, whatever test you are still in the middle of, the fact that you stayed through this entire conversation means something real. The part of you that is being built knew it needed to hear this. Honor that. And know this. The most impressive thing about everything you went through, you did not know you were being tested. You just kept going because something inside you refused to stop. That is the truest proof of who you are.